Battleships were built to dominate naval combat through overwhelming firepower and impenetrable armor. They existed because navies believed wars at sea would be decided by massive ships exchanging gunfire at long range. These floating fortresses were protected by heavy steel armor and armed with main guns between 14 and 16 inches, capable of destroying enemy warships and bombarding fortified coastlines. They served as the centerpiece around which entire fleets were organized. Britain operated battleships like King George V, while Germany deployed the Bismarck to challenge Allied shipping in the Atlantic. Strength, unmatched durability combined with devastating firepower. Limitation, highly vulnerable to air attack. Battleships were not designed as fast strike weapons. They existed in an era when naval power was measured by gun range and armor thickness. Battlecruisers. Battlecruisers mounted battleship-sized guns on hulls capable of much higher speeds. They existed because navies wanted ships fast enough to hunt cruisers and conduct raids while delivering powerful artillery fire. To achieve this speed, they sacrificed armor protection, making them effective in pursuit and long-range operations, but dangerously fragile in sustained combat. Britain fielded Hood as a symbol of naval reach, while Germany deployed the Scharnhorst class for Atlantic operations. Strength, high speed combined with heavy caliber guns, allowing flexible engagement. Limitation, reduced armor made them vulnerable under concentrated fire. Battlecruisers were not built for prolonged battles. They existed to strike decisively and withdraw before retaliation. Heavy cruisers. Heavy cruisers provided long-range firepower without the size, cost, or armor of battleships. They existed because navies required fast, independent warships for fleet escort, commerce raiding, and engaging enemy cruisers across vast ocean areas. These versatile vessels carried guns up to 8 inches in caliber, moderate armor, and exceptional operational endurance. The United States operated ships like Indianapolis for fleet screening and extended missions, while Germany sent the Admiral Graf Spee on raiding operations. Strength, operational flexibility with long-range capability across multiple roles. Limitation, limited protection against battleships or carrier air attacks. Heavy cruisers were not fleet flagships. They existed to operate where heavier ships were impractical. Light cruisers. Light cruisers protected fleets from smaller threats while providing fast, flexible fire support. They existed because navies needed ships quicker than heavy cruisers, but more capable than destroyers, to screen capital ships, pursue enemy scouts, and coordinate fleet movements. Armed with smaller caliber guns, typically 6 inches or less, they emphasized maneuverability over protection. Britain deployed Town-class cruisers for screening and convoy escort, while Japan used Kuma and Nagara-class ships for reconnaissance and destroyer command. Strength, speed combined with operational adaptability across multiple tasks. Limitation, limited firepower and protection when facing heavier warships. Light cruisers were not intended for decisive engagements. They existed to control movement and maintain awareness around the fleet. Destroyers. Destroyers shielded fleets from fast, close-range threats while remaining capable of independent action. They existed because battleships and carriers required agile escorts to counter submarines, aircraft, and torpedo attacks. These fast, lightly armored vessels carried medium-caliber guns, torpedoes, and depth charges, allowing them to escort convoys, screen fleets, and strike enemy ships when opportunity arose. The United States deployed Fletcher-class destroyers across both oceans, while Britain operated Tribal-class ships for aggressive surface combat. Strength, remarkable adaptability across escort, attack, and patrol roles. Limitation, light armor left them vulnerable under sustained fire. Destroyers were not built to absorb punishment. They existed to intercept danger before it reached larger ships. Frigates. Destroyer escorts, later known as frigates, were built specifically to protect convoys rather than fight fleet battles. They existed because submarines posed a constant threat to merchant shipping, and full-size destroyers were too expensive and scarce to escort every convoy. Smaller, slower, and more lightly armed than destroyers, they were optimized for anti-submarine warfare with sonar, depth charges, and long patrol endurance. Britain developed River-class frigates for sustained escort duty, while the United States produced Buckley-class ships in large numbers for Atlantic service. Strength: exceptional efficiency and continuous convoy protection against submarines. Limitation: limited speed and firepower in surface combat. Destroyer escorts were not fleet screens. They existed to keep shipping lanes open. Submarines. Submarines attacked enemy shipping and warships from concealment beneath the surface. They existed because stealth offered a way to bypass armor, escorts, and surface firepower entirely. Relying on torpedoes as their primary weapon, they operated submerged during attacks and surfaced to travel long distances. Their design emphasized endurance, range, and the ability to vanish, rather than speed or protection. Germany deployed U-boats to disrupt Allied supply lines across the Atlantic, while the United States used fleet submarines to cut Japanese maritime logistics in the Pacific. Strength: surprise and persistence against unprotected targets. Limitation: extreme vulnerability when detected, especially from the air. Submarines were not fleet units. They existed to strangle enemy supply networks unseen. Aircraft carriers. Aircraft carriers projected naval power through aircraft rather than gunfire. They existed because aircraft could strike targets far beyond the range of naval guns, fundamentally changing how fleets fought at sea. Operating as mobile airbases, they launched fighters, bombers, and torpedo aircraft to attack enemy ships, submarines, and coastal targets. Their design focused on flight decks, hangar space, and aviation fuel storage instead of heavy armor. Japan deployed carriers like Akagi during early Pacific offensives, while the United States operated fleet carriers such as US Enterprise for sustained long-range operations. Strength: the ability to strike at distance with speed and flexibility. Limitation: exposure when air defenses were overwhelmed. Aircraft carriers were not surface combatants. They existed because air power replaced artillery as the decisive force at sea. Escort carriers. Escort carriers provided continuous air support where full-size fleet carriers were impractical or unavailable. They existed because convoys and amphibious forces required constant aerial protection against submarines and enemy aircraft. Smaller, slower, and lightly armored, often converted from merchant hulls, they carried limited aircraft complements focused on patrol, reconnaissance, and defense. The United States deployed escort carriers like US Bogue across Atlantic convoy routes, while Britain introduced ships such as HMS Audacity to close dangerous air gaps over shipping lanes. Strength: widespread availability and sustained air coverage over vulnerable areas. Limitation: light protection made them unsuited for major fleet combat. Escort carriers were not command ships. They existed to keep vital supply lines moving. Torpedo boats. Torpedo boats attacked much larger warships using speed, stealth, and torpedoes rather than armor or heavy guns. They existed because small, fast craft could threaten capital ships at a fraction of the cost, especially in coastal and confined waters. These lightweight vessels featured powerful engines, minimal protection, and torpedoes as their primary weapon, often supplemented by machine guns or light cannons. The United States operated PT boats, such as PT-109, for night attacks and patrols in the Pacific, while Germany used Schnellboots for fast strikes in European waters. Strength: high speed, and the ability to strike unexpectedly at close range. Limitation: extreme vulnerability once detected. Torpedo boats were not surface combatants. They existed to harass, disrupt, and withdraw before retaliation. Minesweepers. Minesweepers and minehunters located, cleared, and neutralized naval mines rather than engaging enemy ships. They existed because mines could halt fleets, block ports, and disrupt supply routes long after deployment. These small, specialized vessels were equipped with sweeping gear, magnetic equipment, or acoustic systems designed to trigger or remove mines safely. Britain operated large minesweeping forces to keep sea lanes and harbors open, while the United States employed dedicated minesweepers to support amphibious landings across the Pacific. Strength: the ability to restore safe movement in mined waters under controlled conditions. Limitation: vulnerability while operating slowly in predictable patterns. Minesweepers were not combat escorts. They existed to remove invisible threats that could stop navies entirely. Amphibious assault ships. Amphibious assault and landing ships transported troops, vehicles, and supplies directly from sea to shore. They existed because modern warfare required armies to cross defended coastlines and establish beachheads without relying on captured ports. Designed with shallow drafts, reinforced hulls, and large internal cargo spaces, they could beach themselves and unload forces under fire. The United States employed ships like LSTs extensively during operations in Normandy and the Pacific, while Britain used specialized landing craft to support amphibious assaults in Europe. Strength: direct delivery of men and equipment onto hostile shores. Limitation: extreme vulnerability during unloading operations. Landing ships were not combat warships. They existed to put armies ashore where ports did not exist.